This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Peter Lumage is a lawyer in Fairfield, Connecticut, whose journey began in Albania, where his perception of socialism has sounded alarms as to the direction our country is headed. The name of his book, My Father's Prayer, A Refugee's Continuing Search for Freedom.
Pretty much is about socialism and what socialism does to a nation and to human beings. It was the fact that when I got involved in politics over here and I was seeking the nomination for governor as a Republican in the state of Connecticut, I realized that we had so many people in our state who would agree to have a socialistic society. And when my brothers and I escaped communist Albania 30 years ago, I never thought that I would live in the United States one day and see so many young people who are completely misinformed and misguided as to what socialism can do to our country. And that's what really prompted me to put this in writing and make sure that my kids and other people would be able to read sources, firsthand sources, as to what this kind of, ideology would do to our country. I'll tell you one thing, when my three brothers and I escaped Albania. At that time, Albania was still a communist country. And my parents, my siblings that I left behind, 7 siblings, nieces and nephews that were taken to an internment camp or a concentration camp. And my father was tortured to death because he had failed to notify the government, the communist government of Albania, that his sons wanted to escape and search for freedom and opportunity. And Lord and behold, we found the freedom and opportunity over here. And it really scares me that one day we're going to lose it for generations to come. And then, look, when you read Arnold Toynbee, it's an interesting expression that he uses, that he says that great civilizations are not murdered, they commit suicide. Are we as a nation at the verge of committing suicide? And this is the debate that I'm having with people when I talk to them and when I speak at various events, that we're committing suicide by allowing the left-wingers in our country actually to promote socialism without, properly explaining what it did to Eastern Europe, what it did to Germany, what's doing to China, what it's doing to Cuba. I mean, we don't see people from, Republican form of government such as United States escaping and going to socialist countries, but we see the opposite happening every day. It really perturbs me as a first generation, raised here, to see this threat approaching the future of our children, and that's what really got me so energized to write the book.
What's your biggest fear? What do you see happening that frightens you the most?
Thank God for the founding fathers who were able to put, guards to prevent the establishment of a tyrannical government in the United States by having, checks and balances and the Electoral College and all these things that we have in the Constitution. But when you listen to Bernie Sanders, for example, or Ocasio-Cortez, or, some other leftists who are members of the United States Congress or Senate or House of Representatives, and they are seeking the nomination for the presidency, and they openly speak about socialism, and they call it democratic socialism, and you see these thousands of young men and women following them, blindly following these people and wanting to establish socialism here and redistribute the property and the language that they use. It is the exact same thing that my brothers and I left behind 3 years ago in Eastern Europe.
Well, I guess your message is resonating because you've sold quite a few books just through speaking engagements, right?
I've been doing that, the social media. I've been doing events actually all over New York, especially in the boroughs of New York, Westchester County. I've been, doing things. And we sold over 10,000 copies so far, and every penny that we're making out of this book, we have established a non-for-profit called Albanian Connect, and we're trying to help some new arrivals in the United States. These are immigrants and refugees who legally came to the United States, and they are trying to settle here. They're mostly Christians from northern Albania, and so we're trying to spend that money to help these people settle in the United States.
Oh, that's great, Peter. You're giving people a lifeline. We should all be so gracious. Thank you. Betty M. Rafter is a Southerner, and she says Southerners tell stories, and her dad had some good ones. She wrote a few of her own over the years, but at the insistence of her family, she wrote some of the best in her book entitled The Biggest Moonshiner.
I'm a great researcher because I also was a licensed real estate appraiser. So I did a lot of research. I heard all these stories, but I wanted to authenticate them. I knew my dad had moonshine. I mean, we had heard those stories. I did remember hiding out a tar paper shack and running from the feds when I was 3 and 4. I remember that well, but I didn't know all the details. So in researching, I get this big newspaper article, 1929, that my dad was allegedly the biggest moonshiner on the East Coast. So that shocked me. So I started digging for more, and I'm very interested in history and history of the Glades, where I grew up, Belle Glade, Pahokee. Then we moved into West Palm. And my dad was very involved in politics. But my sister kept saying, and the kids kept saying, you've got to write these down. So I thought, well, I love to write. I mean, I've been writing since I was a kid, but just, things for funerals and weddings. And, so I thought, well, maybe I can do this. So I started taking classes. And about, I guess, 7, 8 years ago, I really started writing the book.
You took writing classes.
I did. I took a lot of writing classes. And I sat there and I thought, what am I doing here? I don't even know the nomenclature of a writer.
Wow.
But,
what an interesting story. Picking cotton in Alabama, living in a tent. Lila, is that your mom?
Yes.
Your father was a character, huh? And she put up with him.
Well, I guess she saw the good side of him. Like most people who have faults, they also have some redeeming characteristics, and he certainly did, we found. And in the end, he was really the catalyst for keeping us all together. And after my mother died, he was determined to live until my youngest sister, who was only 18 months old when my mother died, he was determined to live until she grew up. And after her 18th birthday, he passed.
So what happened to your mom?
When she was 38, she married very young. She died in childbirth. We had a cow, and she was holding the rope to the cow, and a dog ran to the cow, and she jerked, and she fell on her stomach. She was almost full term, and she hemorrhaged. And that seemed to be the turning point of my dad trying to do the right thing.
And her last request was for everybody to get along and for your dad to keep the kids together.
Exactly, yeah. We were in the children's home for a while, the youngest ones. My dad had a heart attack. We older ones, as we got married, we would take the younger ones out of the home. In fact, we still are extremely close.
What a great story. Are you out talking about this?
Actually, in the beginning, I was doing readings, senior resident places to kind of get practice, get over my nervousness. I didn't anticipate. I thought once I wrote the book, that was it. And then I realized, I'm getting letters and telephone calls from people I went to school with from Kentucky and North Carolina and Georgia and Jacksonville. And so I thought, well, I guess I probably had better try to promote this a bit if it seems to be an inspiration to people. That's, like I said, I wrote it for our family to know, our parents, and to know what it was like during the Depression, mostly to know that there's no despair in their DNA.
Oh, I like that. No despair in your DNA. Thank you, Betty. Alec Farhelmund is a 17-year-old homeschooled student who started writing short stories about 2 years ago, and already he's got his first published book. It's entitled Boy of the Woods.
It's kind of funny, actually. I was taking out the trash one day. We cut down all these branches, and they were sticking out of the garbage can. And the idea just hit me of the Boy of the Woods horror book. It's pretty amazing. It starts in Freetown, Massachusetts, where 25 years ago, Ted and Vanessa's 8-year-old named Johnny was chased by boys into this mysterious forest. And then after the boys vanish from the trees, Johnny meets a mysterious man who says he will make him like a superhero, but will actually transform him into a cannibalistic monster. So Johnny, he accepts this offer because he's being bullied so much that he wants to be more powerful than anybody else. And so he accepts the offer and pays the deed and disappears into the woods. Now in the present, Ted and Vanessa are driving home after having dinner with his brothers and sister. As they all drive by the forest, one of the trees picks up their cars and throws them into the forest. And when they all get out of the cars, they have to survive from these terrifying creatures and really discover what really happened to Johnny. There's flashbacks, and it really dives deep into what really is this monster that he became. And the father actually has a haunting past with it when he was a kid as well.
The father's connected?
Yes, he had an encounter with this kind of monster when he was little as well.
Does his son know that?
No.
Okay.
This mysterious man does, though, that he's the reason why this monster brought tragedy to his life when he was a kid as well. His nephews, they were out playing by his tree house, and when he goes back in the house to get his camera, and when he comes back, the monster is holding them in his hands and just looking at him and says, "I'll see you again, Teddy." And then he just vanishes. And then 25 years later, this all happened.
So what did he do to deserve that?
I'm actually working on a prequel right now to like how the man became what he is. It's going to explain a lot what led him to Ted. Like he chooses certain people like to punish.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I thought that would be a really good aspect to his character.
Nice. Yeah, it's got a lot of layers. I like that.
Yes.
So this process of writing, do you enjoy it?
Oh yeah, I love writing. I love especially horror. That's my favorite genre. I love horror movies. I've enjoyed them ever since I was a kid. I am active on social media. I'm advertising my book and the websites to buy it on through Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking that will help out a lot, advertising, getting it out to people, posting illustrations from the book and links and like the cover of the book, available on this website, just to give them an idea of and I give them a little description of what the book is about.
Well, you keep writing and I'll keep talking to you. Okay?
All right.
Well, every book I'll talk to you.
Thank you.
Eileen French has been writing poetry in California for more than 2 decades, and finally someone encouraged her to write a book about living with autism. It's entitled Camellias Discovery.
Well, Camellia, the autistic child, loves butterflies. So it's about beautiful butterflies that are her friends. And they talk to her and sing to her and give her butterfly kisses. And she meets this little boy beside a sycamore tree, and he wants to be a part of her world. So when he asked her, she said, yes, on one condition. And he says, what is it? And she said, well, you have to listen more than you talk. Then she listens to the butterflies, and they dance above her head. And then her friends were dancing in circles, and they were dancing in circles so they could see everything at once. And the story ends that she falls asleep underneath the same sycamore tree that she met her friend under.
That's very sweet.
Thank you. You love people, you love animals, and you want to learn. You want to learn more about life and just love of simple things like butterflies. The best thing that can happen is that a lot of kids hear the story. And the main thing is that they learn more about autism and how autistic children are special.
Fair enough.
And to be expected as such.
Are there any places where you could read this story?
I could probably go to libraries.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you think?
Yeah. And have like a little reading, a little question and answer. Well, it looks like you found a new purpose.
Yes.
All right, we're taking a short break, but we're coming right back, so should you. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
We're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Michael Grayson was getting ready to feed the cattle in the foothills of the Sierra Nevadas when we caught up with him to talk about his book entitled A Single Shot.
I'll tell you, I did 20 years in the Coast Guard, and the time that I spent to begin with in the Bering Sea of Alaska and around the Aleutian Islands doing search and rescue cases. And then from there, I got transferred to a Loran station in the Arctic Circle and spent a year up there with 26 other guys. In between all this, as you can imagine, there are many stories about different bars, sexual things that went on in the Arctic and other places. Alaska was very different in the 70s, and I can only imagine that it was more interesting back in the 60s and 50s. And then when I came back to what we called the real world in San Francisco, I got stationed on an 82-foot search and rescue boat. And that was probably the most difficult duty because nobody calls the Coast Guard on a flat, calm day.
Right.
Okay, so here's an 82-footer out there getting beat to hell with a bunch of guys on board. This book is very much so true, and there's a few personal stories in there, but there's some very funny chapters in it. That's how I got into this. I was told by people that I was telling these stories to, and they'd go, "You should write a book." And I turned around and I said, "Me?" And it was difficult. It took me some time to get it down. And it's a small book. I read quite a bit of other authors, and I found that a lot of them water it down, you might say.
Yeah.
So I tried to keep it interesting and keep it moving. Some of it, the Coast Guard, I don't think is going to like, because I talk about some of our unprofessional moments. By the way, this is not a child's book. It's got some sexual things in it, as you might imagine. It's the first night that I was stationed in the Arctic Circle. I see a guy running down the hallway in a black negligee, a man, okay, with three other guys chasing him down. They chased him down, knocked him down. The corpsman comes up, gives him a shot in the arm, okay? He passes out, and they drag him back to his bunk, okay, and sack him out. And I'm sitting there looking at this, and the chief turns around and says, "Hey, this goes on all the time. This guy's going to be, he's going to be transferred here soon." And so I look at this going, no, the Coast Guard would not allow this. Well, it turned out it was a prank. It was all for me, okay?
Got you, Michael.
Yeah. It was interesting, and things like that went on, and I can't describe the things that went on. You got to read it out of the book.
All right, that's a deal. Thank you so much, Michael.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Have a great day. Does the name Sachs ring a bell, like Goldman Sachs? Well, meet Bobby Sachs, who had no idea he had any connection to that Sachs until now. The name of his book, Closure Has Come, Goldman Sachs.
It's just about things coming to a closure in my life and me figuring things out and getting to the bottom line and realizing that my uncle and my grandfather lied to the family.
What happened?
As a teenager, I sat on the beach with my family, all my Sachs family, and I turned to my aunt and uncle and I say, "Aren't we Goldman Sachs?" And he says, "No, that's not us. They changed the name." So I believe that. So I got distracted by a beautiful woman, by having children with this beautiful woman. And I didn't even hear or even read about Goldman Sachs anywhere until 2016 when I was walking through Center City. And I walked by a building and I saw an inscription that said Goldman Sachs. And I backed up and doubled back. And I go, SACHS. So how did they change the name? So I got on my computer and I did research, and figured out that we're Goldman Sachs. Yeah. My cousin, the son of my uncle, was an all-star quarterback at Ryan High School. He could have made it into the NFL. But my uncle said, no, I got something bigger and better for you. I want to put you in the stock market with Goldman Sachs, and you're going to trade Goldman Sachs back and forth. When my cousin graduated high school, he took him up to northern New Jersey. No, Billy married a rich girl on the stock market, works for her dad. And we all believed that for years. Finally, in 2016, I realized, no, she married into the richest. You lied to the family, hid all the wealth, and lied to the rest of us. And that's why I wrote the book. I lived like the average American. Believe it or not, my mom was from job to job on welfare. My dad always had a job and always had slightly some money, but he wasn't wealthy. I'm 44 years old. In 2016, I was 41. But for years and years and years, I always had this auspicious feeling about to become rich. Why do I have this feeling inside my blood? Now I know why I was born, to figure this out and expose this to the public.
What do you gain by exposing this to the public?
Being a celebrity. Yeah.
You want to be a celebrity?
Yeah.
Okay. So why don't you go work for Goldman Sachs?
Absolutely, I would. I would put on a suit, have an SUV come pick me up, an Escalade or a Tahoe come pick me up, take me down to the office, and I'll fucking work for them. Sorry my language, but I'll go, yeah.
So what are you doing to tell people about this?
Well, I'm not that braggadocious about it.
How are you going to become a celebrity if you don't tell people about it?
I put it on Facebook, and I put it on Twitter, but I'm not overexposing it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I mailed some stuff to the president, to the CIA. I mailed a flyer to LA producers. So I'm doing some small steps. The best thing that can happen.
Yeah, what do you want to see happen right now?
That my family be compensated. Every single Sachs that was lied to be compensated. Not even me. Everybody else could be compensated for being lied to.
All right, Bobby, thank you. Jane Becker was a dental hygienist outside Philadelphia before she went back to school to become an RN. And somewhere in there, she found time to write her book, Grandmother's Wish.
What made me just actually decide to write it is when I was babysitting my grandchildren. I absolutely love babysitting my grandchildren. And one night when I was babysitting them, I looked at them and I thought, these are the good old days, but the kids don't realize it. This is so much fun. Having little kids and the fun things they do and the fun things they say. And my book is about a grandmother looking at the child and saying, it just takes you back to when your daddy or your mommy was a baby and the things we did and the good times we had, and it's gone. It's just a memory now. And we look back at pictures and we remember times. We remember that Easter, or we remember that Christmas, or we remember that trip. And you say, oh, if only I could have a day in the life of my former self and my former children, and that's what it's about. If you could go back for a day and just have the day to play with your children and do all the things that you did when they were babies and not worry about the laundry and about cooking dinner and about cleaning and about all the things you have to do, but just enjoying your children. That's what's fun about being a grandparent. You really can enjoy those days.
Right. I remember my mother saying to me, don't worry about the toys. So what if you eat late? Don't worry. Just, relax, be with them, get on their level. Don't try to keep everything in order. Let things be out of order for a little while. It's okay.
Yep. And she was 100% correct.
I know, but that feeling when your house is just like a wreck and every drawer is open and there's wash all over the place and your kids are like when you
Absolutely.
it's just so hard to let go.
Yep. And that's when you're just trying to get through life.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's over.
It's gone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've read it to a few people. We've put it on some social media. I did get a letter at Christmas time that made me cry. Someone sent me a letter. They got the book as a Christmas gift, and it made them cry. Looking back, because she was also through that stage in life. And it made her cry. And that made me cry. Like, wow, it touched someone's heart.
Hey, you can't ask for more than that. Thanks, Jane. Yolanda Acker is a virtual paralegal. She homeschools her children, and she's published her first book entitled The Haunting of Addie Longwood and Other Short Stories.
In high school, I used to write poetry, and I just decided to convert my poems into short stories. I added a little bit of more details, and I actually became a fan of horror movies, and, I liked horror. I also like sci-fi, fantasy too, and paranormal. So, it kind of worked better for me that I just started to convert the poems into like actual stories. And I didn't think that everyone had to like write a whole 350-page novel. So I started writing short stories, which allowed me to put it into the book format that I have now, into various short stories in one.
So tell me about The Haunting of Addie Longwood.
It's basically about a girl. She moves from one town to another, and she's actually has a gift of seeing ghosts. Inherited the gift from her parents, and they moved to a small town in Maine called Ellsworth, and she stumbles upon this girl that was friends with this other girl that lived in the small town that she and her family moved to. And coincidentally, she was able to solve the mystery for the town because there was a kidnapper that terrorized a lot of 12-year-old girls and, did a lot of things to them. And they came up missing. So there was one particular girl that her spirit engaged into her because she had a gift to actually communicate with ghosts. So over the course of the time, she was communicating with the girl, and she allowed the town to find out that the actual kidnapper was a neighbor that was living in the small town, and no one was aware that it was him.
Are the other short stories connected, or are they completely different?
They're all different, but that was the main one. And actually, The Haunting of Addie Longwood was my first manuscript. I had started like around the end of 2009, 2010. So I checked out Page Publishing, and I saw a lot of great reviews about it. And it's marvelous. Like, I just love everything about it because it took me a while to actually find a real publishing company that I was comfortable with. And I went through a couple that didn't suit my financial needs, and I didn't like what they had to offer until I came upon Page Publishing. And, I'm really satisfied with the work.
Well, I couldn't ask for a better way to end this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you, Yolanda. Download the podcast at 710WOR.com. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini.